Hi, my name is CeCe and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 8th, 1985. My home group is the Grace Group in Atlanta, Georgia. It is by the grace of God and the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous that I stand before you in utter amazement. I am not the same woman who was brought into Alcoholics Anonymous kicking and screaming. You don't hear a drawl, but you may hear a twang. And I always start the same way because I was born and raised in Kansas. And no, I do not have an Auntie M. I do not have a dog named Toto. But I do believe that there's no place like home, and this is home. I am at home in my body today. And because the lights are hot, I will be taking off this fine jacket. I will be keeping my eye on it. Now, I will share with you, well, first of all, let me just bust the play group last night. Because when I saw Dorothy walk out on stage, I thought, here we go. Here we go. And then they had the nerve to sit behind me to eat their dinner. And, you know, Scarecrow, I poked Scarecrow and said, dude, you are so busted. Because I was born and bred in Kansas. When I talk, it is always interactive. What that means is I'm not doing this by myself. Now, I know that you ate breakfast and that you're all nice and cozy and feeling good, maybe going to scooch down in your seat and think, oh, well, let's just listen. She may be interesting, spiritual speaker that she is. Well, it's interactive. So when I say to you, when I ask you, do you hear me? I want you to answer me. So let's just practice that. Do you hear me? Yes! That's what I'm talking about. I won't have you do it again because you did it right the first time. So I came from a small town in Kansas. There were 2 parents present in the home. I was 3rd out of 6 kids, and there was a secret, and it had to do with me. I lived with my grandmother until she died. She died when I was 7. My grandmother had said as long as she lived, I'd never have to want for anything. But she died in 1958 and left me. And I want you to know that at 7 years old, I put a death wish in place. I just wanted to die. I wanted to go and be where Grandma was because I knew that that was somebody who loved me. And I didn't want to be where I was with all that fussing and all that fighting. When I was 11 years old, I figured out what the secret was. I had a different father. And my father was the drunk who lived down the street. And as far as I was concerned, he and everybody in his family were drunks. And I swore at age 11 I would never, ever, ever be a drunk like them. It just wasn't going to happen to me. I'll tell you something. When I took my first drink, I forgot every promise I ever made. But I was alcoholic. I had the ism before I even took the first drink. Because I was one of those people that, you know what, I had to go to sleep with a transistor radio earplug in my ear, listening to soft music like Jack Jones and, you know, the standards to quiet the mind. I was a bookworm. I got into anything that would distract me from the reality of my existence because I didn't like it. So I found alcohol, drugs, and boys, not necessarily in that order, when I was 17. It was in the back of his daddy's car. It was New York State Taylor Pink Champagne. He gave me a red rose for love and a white rose for peace, and he had that champagne in champagne glasses, and when the bubbles went down, something happened, and I became somebody else. I had more grace than Grace Kelly. I was so good. Did you get that little chill? It felt good. And all of a sudden, I wasn't ugly, gangly, buck teeth. I could speak. I wasn't that sodbuster from Kansas. I was somebody. And I was always raised to be somebody. Nobody has to know your problems. Just get your education and be somebody. So I've been chasing that. What I need you to know is I chased the high because I like the way it made me feel. I was supposed to go to college because I was the smartest one in the family. But when my older sister went to school and flunked out and went back home and got pregnant, my mother said, no more of my kids goes to college. And being defiant, it was like, I'll show you. I had myself declared an emancipated minor, and I entered the University of Kansas right after high school. But see, I proved my point. You tell me I'm not going to go, watch this. And I went. But see, I'd already proven the point. So now it was about becoming the best known freshman girl on that campus. And the fact of the matter is I was kitty-cornered to 4 bars, and I mean, Kansas is a dry state. They only had 3.2 beer. And while you went to class, I would go to the beer joint and I would sit at your table and I'd save your table for you. And then I would be your entertainment for a package of Marlboro Reds and a pitcher of beer. I would be your entertainment. Under the influence, I became somebody else. I'd get up on the tables with those Juliet dresses. Remember those Juliet dresses? And I would just do it. You know, all the inhibitions left under the influence. See, when I was in high school, I couldn't dance. I was a wallflower. You could cheat off of me. I was smart, but I wasn't like my older sister who had the hourglass figure, who could dance, who had the boyfriends. But you know what? Under the influence, I became somebody else. Yes, honey. And you know how kids are cruel in high school. You know, they are. They told me I danced like a white girl. Now, if you saw me dancing last night, that was anything but. That's a resentment right there. So, but I'm telling you, alcohol and for me, drugs worked for me. It worked for me for a long time. Quiet as it's kept, I always wanted to be a movie star. So my beau got busted because we were crossing state lines. We were headed to Colorado to pick up product, come back and sell it on the campus. I thought that was performing a community service. So they busted him, put him in jail, and being the loyal kind of person I am, I moved to California. I was packed and moved within 3 days. I used to pride myself. My motto growing up was I travel right, I travel light, I travel by myself. I ask for what I want and I pay for what I get. What can you do for me that I cannot do for myself? And I don't need you. Do you hear me? Yeah. I don't need you. And that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nobody had to know when I put my head down on my pillow and cried into my pillow. Nobody had to know about that loneliness, because I would get up, put my clothes on, put on my face, and I would get out there taking care of business. I was raised to take care of business. Been a businesswoman since I was 7 years old. I know how to take care of business. So quiet as it's kept, I wanted to be a movie star. I started doing theater in San Francisco, and when the bridge toll went from 50 cents up to 75 cents, I decided to boycott San Francisco, and I started doing theater in Marin, a small theater company in San Rafael. And people said, CeCe, if you're serious, you need to go to the Mecca. You need to go to Los Angeles. So I quit my job, sold everything I owned, put my stuff in my '68 Mustang, and drove away from my bank teller position, drove down to LA without any prospects of employment. I got to LA and I lived for 3 weeks in Tarzana, and then I walked into an employment agency in Reseda, and I said, I'll do anything except scrub floors. And I made that woman laugh, and I left there with a job working for a huge name entertainer who always remains anonymous. And within 3 weeks, I was living in Beverly Hills, California. Hello? With a bullet, 18 plus 3 plus. I was grown. And I was all that. Thank you very much. Now, I didn't live in the right zip code. My zip code wasn't 90210, it was 90212, but it didn't matter in Kansas. It just said Beverly Hills. And I would check in with my mother, and my mother would say, are you working? And I would say, yes. And after that, what I did was nobody's business. That was my business. It was my business. And what I can share with you is when I went down there, I said, you know what? I've got talent. I don't have to go the casting couch routine. Well, after I went the casting couch routine, I found out that it was work. It was hard work. And my beau at the time when I went down there, I had written into my diary, if he's smart, he won't let me stay down here too long. If he's smart. That was in '74. In September of '76, he came down and he got me because he thought it was too decadent of a lifestyle. And I went back up to Northern California. I was 25 years old, and I did what my books of higher learning said I was supposed to do, and I got married. Now, my books of higher learning were Cosmopolitan magazine, Vogue magazine, Brides magazine. And it said a woman of 25 ought to be married. So I got married. And he was a corporate man climbing the corporate ladder. I got married in October of '76, and in March of '77, we went to Europe. I learned another language. We went to Germany. April 16th, his mother arrived. No, honey. I was going to be a bride for the whole first year. She came with his baby pictures. I started calling my girlfriends in Beverly Hills, and one of my girlfriends said, CeCe, go to Mama get the baby picture, throw it off the balcony, and look at her and say, "You're next." I just said, "Get me a ticket home." And I went back to California. I went back to the place where I was somebody. I went back to the bars. I went back to the bars. I went back to the place where I didn't have to stand in line to get in because everybody knew me. I went back to the place where the DJ spun the records that I liked to listen to. I went back where the waitresses saved a table for me because I tipped very well. I went back because I love the nightlife. I love to boogie. And I tell you, I could get down. And I loved that ambience. I loved the way it made me feel I was somebody else. I cannot tell you when I crossed the line. All I know is that I started living for the weekend, and then Friday turned into Thursday, turned into Wednesday. Tuesday was ladies' night. And, pretty soon I had to be jump-started on Monday. Now, the beginning of the end came for me in June of 1984. I got a call that I was not prepared for. I got a call that told me that my mother had died. Now, my mother had called me when I was a freshman in 1970 to tell me that my real father had been killed. He was shot to death by his wife. And my mother called to tell me, and I ran down 7 flights of stairs to get that call. And when she told me that, I felt nothing. I said, "Why are you telling me this? You said he never did anything for me. Why are you telling me this?" And I felt nothing. I said, "That's what he gets for being a drunk." So I got this call that told me that my mother had died. And I had no idea what to do, except I knew that I had to take care of business. So I got my younger brother out of Sacramento, and I got on a plane, and I started flying to Kansas because we had to take care of business. My brother did the most natural thing in the world. He just started wailing. He just started bawling. And me, I started explaining things to the flight attendant. And so she gave us free drinks. And what I can share with you is that even on the day of the funeral, I could not do it without taking something. I went into the bathroom at the funeral parlor. I said, "I'm sorry, God, I'm sorry, Mama, but I got to take care of business." And I got loaded. I stayed in Kansas for 3 days. I stayed at the homestead. And then I checked myself into a motel. And the only time I would allow myself to feel anything is when I was in the shower. And that water would start to hit my face, and I would start to cry. And then I would tell myself, "Dry up. You got to take care of business." I returned to California within 10 days. And I tried to use work as a therapy. Because when all else fails, just work. Put your head to the grindstone and just work. It doesn't matter how you feel, just work. And people that I worked with said, "CeCe, you've had a terrible loss. You need to grieve." But see, they didn't understand. They didn't understand that if I started crying, I would never be able to stop. I finally decided to get some help. And so I started seeing a counselor one-on-one. And I would go to see that counselor maybe on a Tuesday, and on a Wednesday day I would go back to work and go off on somebody. There came a day when I walked into that big yellow house and I looked at my counselor, John, and I said, if I never say it again, I think I might have a problem with alcohol and drugs. And he looked at me and he said, would you like some help? And I said, yes. And then he never brought it up again, and I never brought it up again. We just acted like it hadn't been said. So I went, and for 55 minutes, I vented. I did not tell the truth. I vented. Almost a year later, from June of '84 until May of '85, I could feel myself falling. It was like I was hanging on to a building by the edge, and I was falling, and I couldn't keep myself from falling. And in May of 1985, I just stepped over the edge, and I tried to commit suicide. May 16th, 1985. And for the attempt, they put me in a mental hospital. And I'm a borderline genius. They put me in a mental hospital. On the way up, I had the people driving the medevac van stop so I could get me some cigarettes. I told them nobody would know. It would be okay. So in my little house coat, my little slippers, I got out and went into 7-Eleven, made my little purchase, got back into the medevac van, and went driving over to the mental hospital. You know, for that 72-hour hold. And at the end of that mandatory 72 hours, they said, CeCe, do you still feel like killing yourself? I'm going to tell you what not to say. I looked at them and I said, no, I don't feel like killing me. I feel like killing you. That's the wrong thing to say, because I got to stay a little bit longer. You know, I was one of those that had, you know, a diagnosis of alcoholism and substance abuse, but also psychotic disorders. That's what I focused on, the psychotic disorders. And in that mental hospital, there was another angle that I had to shoot. And there was this long, tall, dark drink of water, and I became very thirsty. And see, the name of the game is you love me. You may not know it yet, but you love me. So I batted these big brown eyes, and, you know, I ended up having an affair with a psych tech right out of the... Gave him all of my disability checks, bought him gold jewelry. It was atypical behavior. It was not typical. But desperate people do desperate things. And there's nothing quite as pitiful as a desperate woman alcoholic. I had to hit what the book calls pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization before I would listen to anything anybody had to say. And I'm sitting at home, it's a Sunday, I'm drinking Coors beer, smoking weed, snorting crystal meth, and just trying to find that plateau. You know, and I got the remote control in my hand because I'm in charge. And one of those ads comes on the television. Do you have a problem with alcohol and drugs? If so, call this number. You know, and if you're quick enough, you can get past those ads. Well, this day I couldn't get past it. I heard it. I heard it. And they gave a telephone number, and the number stuck in my head. I got up, went to the kitchen, got the phone, opened the doors to the stairs, started sneaking down the stairs, don't know why I was sneaking, dialed this number, and the happiest woman on the other end of the line, her name was Jody, she was so happy to hear from me. I told her all my business. You know, and I've been raised, don't put your business in the street. I told her all my business. She gave me the name of this hospital in Campbell, California. Never forget it. And I called them up, and I made an appointment to go in the next day. I was just going to give them 55 minutes of my time because I know how this works. And I walked into this hospital, and I was paranoid. I wanted them to lock the doors. And the program manager looked at me and said, "CeCe, you got a lot of demons. Are you willing to go to any length now?" And I hung my head and I started to cry because I was whipped. Alcohol and drugs had beat me into a state of reasonableness. I was whipped. Alcohol is a formidable foe, and I was whipped. And so I said, yes, I'm willing to go to any length. And so they kept me in that hospital. And I need you to know that the very next day, I forgot how willing I said I was going to be. Just forgot. Woke up, my feelings woke up with me. I was hot, I was cold, oh my God. They put me in the room with a heroin addict who didn't follow the rules. I mean, I'm a good little rule follower, you know. They made us get up during the day and do stuff, and, you know, she would stay in bed. She would not get up, and at night, she would be knitting. And when you hear the clink, clink, clink of those knitting needles, oh, I'm on my last nerve. So I got up and I went down the hall to the nurse's station, and in my nicest, whitest voice, "If you don't mind, I would like another room. I'm having difficulty sleeping." And the nurse looked at me and said, "We encourage the patients to work these things out amongst themselves." Well, okay. You know, got the head to going, walked down, you know, started walking over furniture, calling people names. You know, they got me another room. But what I can share with you is that is the first time I was honest about the way that I felt. See, I was congruent for the first time. My insides and my outsides matched. And on a Tuesday night in that institution, they brought in Alcoholics Anonymous. On a Tuesday night, the Winchester Mystery Group, oh my goodness, these were the happiest people. They're smiling at each other, you know, and I'm sitting here, my arms are folded. I'm looking at these people. You know, I've gained 30 pounds. I'm like two pigs in a gunny sack fighting to get out. And I'm looking like, you better tell me something because I don't like the way I feel. You know, and these people get up, excuse me, and they started telling their personal business. You know what? I was embarrassed for them. Because I had been taught, don't put your business in the street like that. You know what? But they called it sharing. And something happened. You know, there was one of those pregnant pauses. And I don't know what it was, but something got me up out of my seat. And I said, I need to hear the stories. I just found out something about myself, and I need to hear the stories. And that was my point of identification in Alcoholics Anonymous. At the end of that meeting, I got my first sponsor. She came up to me. She put one of those little 24-hour desire chippy things in my hand, turned my fingers over them, and she looked at me, and she said, keep coming back. And I knew that she knew how I felt, and I wasn't the only one anymore. And I started in on the journey of the 12 steps, and my life has not been the same. That first step was the hardest one, that admission of powerlessness at depth, and the fact that my life is unmanageable. I already knew I was crazy. I had walking papers from a mental institution, so step 2, not a problem. But step 3, oh no. Now you said higher power, but I knew you meant God. And I didn't want Mama to be right. And I come from the Bible Belt. I can drop and give you 20 minutes of solid prayer without taking a solid breath. And I'll tell you something. I wasn't going to tell anybody some of the things in my life. But I was told that if I didn't work a searching and fearless moral inventory, that I wouldn't be able to stay here. And my sponsor said, if you don't know where to start with your mama and your daddy. And so I started out writing down what they did to me. Yeah, they did stuff to me. And I was writing, and in the midst of it, I got it. I was the common denominator. There was nothing that happened to me that I wasn't there. Right in the midst of it, I shared that 5th step with my sponsor, and it is the beginning of a kinship with God and our fellows. It is the beginning, because all of a sudden, I'm not the only one. I was a little upset because she didn't seem to come to me with step 6. I'm just wondering, what's happening here? And then I read step 6 again, and it's about getting entirely ready. And she couldn't get me entirely ready. Nobody can get you entirely ready but you. And in doing the inventory, in looking at the character defects, in humbly asking God to remove them, what I found out was that, any inventory drawn up in red ink only is not complete. My sponsor made me do an inventory of assets. And I'll tell you something, I cried trying to come up with some assets. I came up with 3 at the beginning. She forced me to come up with some good things about me. And I came up with 3. And now I have a list that would choke a Shetland pony. It took a while before in step 8 I saw that calm, thoughtful reflection about my inability to form relationships was my problem, even my alcoholism. I needed to look at my inability to be a member among members, a family member among family members, a worker among workers, because of that selfishness and self-centeredness. I was told 10, 11, and 12 were maintenance steps, that I was to continue to take personal inventory of me, not you, and that when I was wrong, promptly admit it. I can tell you when you're wrong. I can tell it to you pretty promptly. But me, I'm still working on it. Step 11, that's the crux of the program that I have today. Before coming here today, I just surrendered. I just surrendered because God knows who God wants to talk to using my body. It ain't about me. And having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, I'm here to carry the message. What is the message? For you new people, the message is this: that you too can recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. You too can recover. That's the message. The trick is you got to want to be sober more than you want to be drunk. And if you reach out for help, I guarantee you there will be hands reaching back to help you, and we will go to the wall with you. My life hasn't been a cakewalk, but because of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll tell you something. In that quest to be somebody, I returned to school in 1994. After a 25-year absence, I was 43 years old. I ended up getting my AA degree. I entered university. I got a bachelor's degree in English. I went right into graduate school. I got a master's degree in pastoral ministries. And right now, I'm at Emory University in seminary getting a master's of divinity. So I'm not the same person who was brought in here kicking and screaming and cussing and fighting. What I need to share with you is that my life is not my own. I have a committed life today. And so if you need me, I want you to call me. Call my name, and I'll be there in a hurry. On that you can rely and never worry. Why? Because there ain't no mountain high enough. There ain't no valley low enough. And there ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you. Thanks for letting me pass it on.